Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Today we have, unfortunately, some solemn news.
What?
On Monday, May 18th at 12:21 p.m., the world lost what some people might call a great man, but who most of us consider mostly a man. Stephen Josephine Collier was declared officially dead to the intelligent world because the little shit posted his first TikTok video.
Oh, I was like, who the heck? What the heck is going on? Who's Josephine?
I don't know. I don't know your middle name, so I just threw something. I was going to go with Alphonse, but I couldn't figure out the female of Alphonse, so Josephine. But I cannot believe that you actually got on TikTok and posted that, Stevie.
And the funny thing is, like, I tried doing it on just the video, but the reason why I went with TikTok is because it actually has the little setup to do it. It's the only one out there that has it. I really searched. I even asked on Quora, is there anything I can do besides TikTok? But all I do is I use it, I post it there, and then I post it on Instagram. And I thought you would still love me if I did it that way.
I saw it. I've been watching them on Instagram, the Instagram videos, and they are dumb as all hell. But that's kind of your brand. So
yeah, I mean, they're so fun. Sean's like, what are we talking about? TikTok?
Well, I actually made a TikTok video with my kids. Then my wife proceeded to post it on my Facebook.
Oh, good.
Stevie actually opened an account and is like posting on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I told him if he did that, I would disown him.
You scared me though. I thought we actually lost someone real. It's like, how did I not know? I'm in all the Facebook groups.
Acting.
But dude, seriously, like TikTok, the first one wasn't popular. Oh shit, excuse me. The first one wasn't popular because I posted it so late at night, and it's my favorite one. The second one got 861 views.
Okay.
So it's like, wow. It's a very young thing, kind of like if you jumped on YouTube early.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So it's like Royal Road. It depends on when you post.
Royal Road
Yeah.
Legends.
No, Royal Road, the like serial book series or books, like fantasy, sci-fi, all kinds. Royal Road.com.
Platform, yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly like that.
And it depends on when you post it. Makes all the difference on whether you get views or not.
Exactly. It's unfortunate because I like my first video better. I thought it was really, I don't know. But dang it, Andy, you scared the crap out of me, and then you got me. You got me real good. Because I was like, why is he saying it so boring? Like, hey, welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. And you're like, I have some solid news. So like, and then I was like, is he not going to be an author anymore? Like, why wasn't I told?
I was going to do something like we're shutting down the Fantasy Fiends podcast due to the loss of Stevie Collier. But as I was writing out the little speech, I went another way.
Oh my God, you got me, man. You got me. I was wondering if you're going to give me shit for it. I was so embarrassed. Like, yeah. And my mom like goes and likes them on TikTok too. But it's fine though. I like, they're just being supportive. But wait a minute. You don't know my name, my real name?
I don't know your middle name.
It's Steven.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Mark Stephen Collier.
Mark, there you go.
Sorry.
I did know that. I did actually know that.
We are honored here to have Sean Oswald here today, who's just like, what have I just been thrown into? He is the author of the Life in Exile books. Sean, are these lit RPGs?
Yes, yeah, that's the genre. Although basically, I just call it epic fantasy done in the style of lit RPG.
So there are stats.
So there are stats and there's a progression, but progression fantasy is not new. It's been around for a long time in terms of the idea of your protagonist getting stronger throughout it. Now we just quantify it in lit RPG. So.
I got you. Wow, okay. That's a really interesting take, and it looks like it's doing really well for something that I've never heard done before.
Well, better than I expected, and I not to clue anybody in, but I think lit RPG is actually probably easier to break into than some other genres. So
I wrote a lit RPG and I vowed never to write another one after I had to use an Excel spreadsheet for stats and stuff. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing anymore.
I have 4 spreadsheets right now. So,
Oh man.
Lord.
See, I would not do that myself. I'm not enough of a gamer to pull off one of those things. I would like get someone to do the brains behind that sort of progression, and I just write all like the character stuff in the action. Like I'd have to co-write it with someone.
The hard part about that is if you go against a boss, I feel like you'd have to work with your stats guy to wonder, like, because that's how I wrote mine. It's like, well, you can't go against the final boss right now, or you can't finish that quest because you're not powerful enough. Have you made friends to team up with? Sean, so I have to ask every Lit RPG person, are you a WoW guy? Did you play Aeon? Where did you start?
So actually it goes back to 16 when I started playing tabletop Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, nice.
And I've essentially run as the dungeon master for 30 years.
Nice.
You know, not like I get to very often because you know, family and whatnot, but off and on for the last 30 years. And then my big game that I played was EQ. EverQuest, EverCrack, whatever you want to call it.
Which one?
Yeah.
The first one or second one?
The first one.
The first one. I started, that was my first MMO, was the second one. That's how, I'm 27, so it came out right when I was able to play. And then I moved to Star Wars Galaxies.
Don't worry, Stevie. I have 2 kids that are older than you.
You look, okay, you look way younger than that. I thought you were going to say they're like 5 or 6.
No, I have 9 kids. So, but it's a little bit of a cheat because my wife and I have 6 kids that we've had, and then we have 3 that we adopted from Haiti. So I have a 29-year-old daughter that we adopted from Haiti when she was 12, and then I have I have a daughter who passed, who would have been 27 now.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's sad, but you know,
Yeah,
it's like a beautiful grandson from her now. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very. And she was also from Haiti.
She was also from Haiti. Yep.
Did they keep their names, or did you kind of give them American names?
No, they kept their first name, but we adopted them, and both of them actually chose to make their family name into their new middle name.
Oh, that's
cool.
Nice. That's really cool. Wow.
And then our other daughter we adopted, she was 5 when we adopted her, so it was a little different than being 11 or 12. You know.
Did the older 2 speak French already, or
spoke French? Creole is the actual language there, but spoke some French in school, which is kind of cool because that was my minor in college. So highly useful.
Really, yeah,
highly useful.
I love the French language, and well, actually, that's part of my good news today. Not French, but not even similar, actually. But so. Sean, we have a really cool thing that we do at the beginning of the podcast, and that is we talk about something cool that's happened to us within, recent times. And and seriously, it's this, we're supposed to tell people before we start, but Andy and I never do. So that there's a reason why we are the #1 fantasy podcast. And we're trying to go for #1 in sci-fi too, right, Andy? Let's just kick everybody out. Let's just kick everyone's ass. So, Sean, if you want to think about it a little bit, Andy and I can go first.
Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, you know what? Seriously, in the back of my mind, I'm trying to think of something to come back at you with, and I just you're too perfect. I can't think of anything. You should write faster than 12,000 words a day. So my good news is book 2 is finally done. It is called Mech Planet. It is up for pre-order. So the only person that's really read it is Jonathan, and it's really nice. The first email I got from him was just read just all this stuff that you have to fix. This is just going to sell it better, all that stuff. And I was so disappointed. I was sitting in the vet office, so Lisa, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not very good on critique. It's always been a downfall of me. It's also with my personality type too, if you believe that. This book I got back had hardly anything I needed to fix, and he was just this is what sci-fi needs. And it really made my day because, I went through a struggle in the past 6 months. Of course, Andy's always there for me. Thank you, Andy. So that was really good news to hear that book 2 is perhaps even stronger than book 1, and book 1's doing so well. And that's all thanks to people like you. Good news outside of work, because surprisingly, writing books is work. super hard final exam I told you guys about on Japanese 2. I got a 96 on it, and I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I freaking did it. Yay.
Very good.
Woo. Yeah. It was open book, and I didn't open my book because I was like, what's the point of this test being open book? If it's 10 pages long, you don't have like a chance. Actually, I had to email and say, can I have 30 more minutes? Because I had to do an oral exam in the middle of it, which I got an 85. I was pretty upset about that. But Japanese is kind of hard. But yeah, that's my good news. And Rebecca and Rajin, I used your dictionary. Arigatou gozaimasu. So that's my good news.
Very cool.
I'm still excited about it. So
that's cool. Sean, did you think of something?
I'm still working on it, Andy. I'll let you go if you don't mind.
All right. Okay, so I guess I've had a variety of good news as I'm trying to think of them.
Nice.
As of 2 days ago, May 19th, the first 2 books of the Silent Champion series are available on audiobook, narrated by Ralph Lister, who did some of the Malazan books, and I listened to some of it, and it was so much fun. Like, I had a lot of fun writing the series, but then like listening to him bring it to life, it was amazing. And so it's 40 hours long, basically 39 hours and 15 minutes for the 2 books. And they got new cover art and stuff. So it's called, I think, the Silent Champions Publishers Pack or something like that. And it's been on Audible for 2 days, and I'm really stoked because I love audiobooks. So it's so cool to have that series brought to life.
And if you haven't read his Cerberus books, like, you're just insane. Just go look at the covers. You know you're going to get more than what the cover even shows.
That's another thing, is that I saw sort of an early sketch of the cover for book 4, and it is so cool. Like, the idea that I had initially, we couldn't go with it. So then I just kind of came up with this idea on the fly, and the artist was like I did this horrible stick image, of what I was thinking. And the artist actually turned it into something really, really cool. And I'm super excited to see that, because it's going to be awesome. It's the main character Nolan fighting in space on a spaceship against a bunch of bad guys, which is always really fun. And this is my second week of working on book 7, which is currently titled Shadow Killer, which is just such a fun title.
Yeah.
And I passed the 50,000 word mark today, and I feel like it's almost halfway done. Like, the book is just growing on me, but in really, really cool ways. Some stuff has come up, unexpected twists and turns that I kind of had to compensate for. So I had to take yesterday morning off of work to sort of take a walk and, clear my head, refigure things. But I'm so stoked with how it's coming out. So it should be done in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be 7 of 12. So my goal is to finish all of them by the end of the year. We'll see if I can actually make that work, the last 5 in the series. But yeah, that's my good news.
So really 12,000 words a day.
Well, right now I'm doing more like 8. Just because I'm not pushing myself as hard. When I was sort of really, really pushing late last year, I was writing between 12 and 15,000 words some days, but that took a real toll on my brain and my eyes. Actually, my eyes have gotten a lot worse in the last year because I spend so much time writing, and it's so much concentration. So I've had to sort of take it easier on myself and, work a little bit less. Ooh, that's more good news. On Monday, my gym opens.
Oh, wow.
That is, yeah. So here in BC, they sort of, praised themselves and said they had sort of the best response to this whole situation in all of North America. Like the lowest number of cases and the best or the quickest response and isolation and things like that. So now things are actually starting to open up. Restaurants are opening up. Gyms are opening up, all with social distancing measures, 50% capacity, 2 meter distance between all the tables, things like that. But it looks like BC is starting to open up. So as of Monday, I get to go back to my gym. And I have this terrible basement gym that's got a bench that's too short for my big body.
Yeah.
The bar is too narrow. I literally am holding it at the weight discs, and it's not wide enough. And it's this little tiny bar that can't hold enough weight. It's been miserable for the last 2 months of trying to get exercise in the house. So I am so happy to go back to the gym.
That is good news. How is it in Illinois, Sean?
So it depends on, there's 2 Illinois. There's Chicago, Illinois, and there's the rest of Illinois.
Yeah.
So I'm in a city called Peoria, Illinois.
Oh, cool.
So And in Peoria County, there's not even one case per 1,000 people.
That's good.
So it's hard to take it very seriously here, even though we know that there's other places where it's really bad. The crazy thing is my wife actually works on a statewide COVID-19 hotline for one of the local hospital networks here. So,
oh, wow.
So it's they take all the incoming calls, and it's pretty useful at this time. So
That's awesome.
So my good news in terms of book terms. So I really took a face plant in April, just change in schedule, the kids not having anybody to entertain them. So they all thought they needed me to entertain them. So I'd get home. I was still working, but I'd get home from work, and then the kids would need me every single night. So my writing just nosedived. But I am back on track. Somebody threw down a gauntlet, and now I don't write 12,000 words a day. I put about 2,500 in, and I'm pretty happy with that. And with that, book one is doing fabulous. You never know when you release a first book, right? Never done this before. And it's been out for since April 14th. So whatever that is, like 39 days. And all but 9 of those days, it's been in a bestseller category, and can't knock it. Outside of work, in terms of happiest thing going on right now is really nothing other than my wife and I actually sat down last night and started actually thinking we could plan a vacation, maybe late July or August.
Yeah.
And just the idea of going somewhere. I mean, who gets excited about just the thought of being able to go sit outside on the patio at a restaurant,
right?
But we're thrilled now that that's coming up next week for us. So
that is really cool. Yeah, super excited about that too. Vancouver, there's this big article about how they're looking into rezoning sort of like outdoor spaces so that they can have more patio seating to sort of, make for better social distancing while opening things up.
Man, I wish Austin was like that. I think we're still I don't think you have to wear a mask anymore, but I still do. I still do. And I give evil looks to people who don't. No, I'm kidding. But no, it's still everyone's pretty cautious here, I would say.
I thought Texas was kind of pushing on opening, but maybe not.
They are. Yeah, there's we have these like really popular lakes that people were going to, even like in the most critical times during this. And they would just go sit out there, and like the cops would have to go, and it was pretty crazy. Luckily, I stayed home anyway, so I'm fine with my little self. But yeah, I want to go to the beach. I want to try to go surfing. So
isn't it crazy? I really am more of an inside person than an outside person, but being forced to be inside suddenly makes me want to be outside hiking or doing some kind of crap like that. Yeah,
I guess we all took it for granted. Actually, my apartment complex is sitting on top of a hiking trail. So any direction you go, it's a hiking trail. So it's pretty cool. Nearly got ran over by a deer a couple nights ago. That was interesting. I thought it was a big jaguar. I'm like, Stevie, where do you think you are? Where do you think you are? But when it's like pitch black at night, you just don't know. So today we have an interesting topic for you guys. Sorry, it took a little time to get to this. But today we're talking about finding a sense of self-worth, and I am worthless. So I shouldn't even joke like that. That's bad energy.
No, it's negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Outward that actually sort of reinforces it in your brain.
Even jokes do it, which is kind of interesting. So I'm worthful. I'm so
there.
Worthful.
You go. Exactly.
You guys don't even know. I'm like arrogant worthful.
You're priceless, Stevie.
Priceless. Yeah. You can't afford this.
But as I was thinking about the topic, as I wrote in the description is, where does this idea of self-worth, or where does this perception of value come from? Is it something that is built from like externally, or you developed externally, where someone says, you matter to me, therefore you have value, and we feel, oh, look, I matter to this person, an external factor, or is it something that comes from inside where I feel that I matter to someone else, not because they tell me, but because I feel, or because of something that I do, or maybe a skill or an expertise, or something where I feel like I provide something of value, or is it a combination of both? And that was just sort of an interesting question for me to think about on the spot. And so I'd love to discuss it. But Sean, you were talking about how in your book, both the father and the daughter kind of have to go through this process of discovering their sense of self-worth. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think the daughter's pretty straightforward, simple. What 15-year-old does not question their identity, their self-worth? And she starts out, basically the family is sent through a portal to another realm. And it's another world that works basically on game-like rules. But on Earth, she's the shy girl who is hostile to her mom and trying to figure out the ways to sneak out, but doesn't want to actually be upfront about it. There, she gets into a place where real issues come up, life and death issues, not can I go to such and such party? Can I, will they like my outfit that I'm wearing? And I have 8 daughters. So I don't want to minimize that sentiment, but when you're faced with the real life and death, she's forced to grow up a little bit. And so she works through that. And even her parents kind of marvel at, who is this girl? And where's the girl who complained about every little thing, and now she's not complaining about being stuck out in the mud and with no food and no water, and she's just happy to be alive.
Now, let me ask you this, sort of taking it back to the question. Over the course of this book, or the books that you've written so far, what contributes to her sense of self-worth more? Like seeing these external factors where someone is telling her, oh, thank you so much for your help, or seeing the difference that she's making, or just sort of feeling the difference? Like, what do you think contributes more to her growing sense of self-worth?
I think that I think in reality and in the book, there's a process. You need to see external validation. We all need some kind of validation. That's why, parents and teachers and coaches and people can be such great mentors and play such a role. And so that's her first stepping stone. But what's going to progress in the subsequent books is her, again, identifying that she has this value and she always had it. It was always there. And it's not just because of what she can do, but what she can do helps her feel important and get past that hurdle of, how do I look in this? Is my hair too frizzy? Is my, makeup right? And those little trivial things, to actually realizing that she had that value all along, and it wasn't ever based on what she did or didn't do. It was based upon the fact that she is a human being and entitled to value.
So like breaking it down to a very, very simplistic concept, it starts external in the sense that someone says, thank you so much for your help, or, whatever the things that happened to her. But then when she internalizes it, and that's what sort of capitalizes or builds on it. So then once she says, okay, people actually care, then maybe she starts looking inside and finding, oh, this is something that I have that is, that's valuable to someone else. So this is something that is valuable about me. And then they start building on that thing internally. So, I guess it has to start with that external factor, but then move internal.
Yep. And the dad, Dave is his name, is a little harder case because he's already past that teenage angst period where he's more pliable. He's already built, he's 40 years old, and he's already reached that stage where he is, he's built up his whole life of, if I'm successful at my job, if I provide for my family, if I win my cases, if I do this and I do that, then I'm worth something. But the moment that I can't do one of those things, or, it begins with him being late to his son's ball game. And he's late because of a work obligation. And he's beating himself up over, I can't, no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to meet everybody's expectations. And there's this monologue that a person can do inside their head where they're saying, other people are looking at me as though I have no value if I don't accomplish these things for them. the crazy thing is half the time that's not what the other person is actually thinking, but you tell yourself those things. You tell yourself you're worthless.
And that's what really cuts you down more than the external is that internal,
right.
That self-talk, which is reflected in external, but often it's mostly internal. Like if you take a look at sort of teenagers' sense of deficiency, I will use my own personal example. In my head, I still have this nickname that my sister called me. She called a very incorrect name. She called me Gordo Lojo, which was, I think it was supposed to be like crazy fat person. Gordo is fat in Spanish and loco is crazy. So, but that gordo part, because I was always, I still am sort of on the chunkier side. And so all of my life, I've had this sense of like, this is how I felt about myself. And it was maybe 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 external factors, but this internal factor is what's built it to this thing that's almost like central to my life. And so that's the negative. It takes one negative comment from someone or from, a few negative comments, and it becomes the center of your world in this really negative way. Whereas building sort of positive, it requires a lot more external like validation and reinforcement for you to actually get it. Because the human brain is trained to focus, or it focuses more on the negative, right? Mm-hmm. It skews negative. And so one negative comment can make this massive negative ball of negativity essentially fill your world, whereas it takes a lot of positivity to build even a small amount of positivity inside.
Well, what psychology tells us, 30 days to build a positive habit and 3 days to build a negative. So,
there you go.
So, yeah. And as I was thinking about this subject today, I realized that this is sort of a quintessential discussion for my generation, which is Generation X. Growing up in the materialistic 80s where everything was based on success, and then there was a certain rebellion. If you look at the movies of my generation, you see that Breakfast Club or whatever is the fight against the way that we have to be defined by whatever specific roles that we're supposed to be plugged into. And meaning our own self-worth.
Yeah, there was that pretty drastic shift from sort of like, especially for men, before women entered the workforce in full force, it was all about, the provider, right? This role that the man had to play, the super, masculine man who would go to work, would provide for his family, would come home, you see it, reading the paper in his den with the scotch, just those quintessential stereotypes, right? Now the stereotypes are a lot more different. Everybody is sort of, or society is sort of training us to look for that external validation in the sense of, hey, check out my Instagram post. I'm famous now because a lot of people like my content, or they check out my TikTok videos for some reason. Stevie's not paying attention, or he'd have got that shot a little faster.
I was sorry. I was looking for the reading, but I can't find it.
Oh, okay. I'll forward it to you.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So there is this sort of desire or this trend toward external validation. And at the same time, there's this whole movement of, self-care and self-love and, body positivity and sex positivity, all about finding sort of the internal validation. And they're kind of at odds with each other. And so they create almost like this confusing mixed message that I think is affecting a lot of people. It's pulling them one way or the other a lot more strongly.
Well, hey, if you ever saw the Netflix show Stranger Things, so the dad is an 80s dad there. And we don't know exactly what he does, but we know he goes to work, and then we know he comes home and he's completely and utterly disconnected. So again, identity in activity versus relationship. And so that's what my main character is learning to make the transition from what I call a human doing to a human being.
Oh, I like that. And now the focus is really on like your passion or your art. Like instead of it being sort of your career is something that you do to fuel whatever your passion is, whether it's a food blog or an influencer or an artist, an author, whatever it is, and that sort of becomes the sense of identity, or that's what people are promoting as the thing that should be your sense of identity. But again, that's external validation that in the end, it can actually build internal value. But at the same time, it's so much easier to sort of tear down your value. Like, look at Stevie. Stevie was just talking about how critique from Jonathan seriously fucked with him to the point where he was like, I am done, right?
Yeah. Just
one email, one negative critique on something that he's, in a way, he's sort of built his sense of identity and self-worth around, is his self-worth as an author, right? The ability to make people laugh, to tell fun stories, all of these things that sort of influenced who he is as a person. And so when something negative is like reflects back on our passion, which is who we kind of think of ourselves to be, it can almost be devastating. And this is where that external negative validation comes in, or the opposite of validation, negative impact, influences our internal sense of self-worth very, very strongly.
Yeah, I think you have to eventually anchor that sense of self-worth in the relationships with the people around you, because whether it be your art or your job, whatever it is, those things fade.
Yeah.
You are not always going to be the newest, hottest, best-selling author. You are not always going to be, the best at whatever. Those things all fade. But the relationships that we build with people around us can last forever.
Yeah. Or even so one thing that I have tried to do in my own life, I have acknowledged from fairly early on in my author career that I will never be the best, right? I will never be the next Brandon Sanderson. I will probably not redefine any genres, but I was still looking for some sort of superlative, sort of the most or best in something. And I sort of built this sense of identity as the hardest working author that people know, to the point where people still say, they talk about how much I work every day, how much I write, things like that. And this is sort of this thing that's built my sense of self-worth. And recently, when I was going through this sort of challenge, this struggle to write, to the point where I had to actually stop midway through a book and change to another project because it was just not working, it kind of rocked me. It rocked this idea of who I had of myself at the time. And because of the way that I approached the creative process, I was able to sort of talk myself or think myself through what was going on, and it sort of helped me realize that this idea that I built of myself as the hardest working or the fastest writing or whatever it is, this is just this construct, right? It's just this artificial thing that I've put in my own head. And people, when they say, holy shit, you write so much, or you're a machine, it sort of inflates that. But that construct is not actually my self-worth. And so sort of drilling down into what makes me feel like I have value as an author is the genuine humanity of my stories. Like I will never have the greatest understanding of the human brain or human emotions or the psyche or actions or all these things. I will never fully understand these things, but I will always do my best, I will say, at writing them genuinely and honestly and as sincerely and deeply as I can. And for me, changing my mindset from the hardest working author to the one who just tries to bring in that genuine humanity, that kind of shifts my perspective, because now if a chapter takes 8 hours to write instead of 2, but it really gets into that sort of human emotion that I find interesting, that is what makes me feel like, yes, I put in a good writing shift. If it's like, yes, I wrote 4,000 words in an hour, but the story doesn't really do anything, like it doesn't really get anywhere, it doesn't serve any purpose beyond, hey, more action, fun shooting, space flying, things like that, then that's not what makes me feel fulfilled as an author. So sort of making that shift honestly, it's been in the last 3 or 4 months, probably since the end of last year, beginning of this year, I've sort of made that shift mentally, and I feel like it's helped me be a lot more stable in terms of the emotional highs and lows of being an author, of the creative process. And I'm sorry for talking so much, because
no, I was fascinated. I did not know that, and here I am inflating you every time we start. Because I'm like low key jealous. I'm like, fuck, why can't I write 12,000 words?
Well, that's the thing. It's like I see your easy access to humor. Like it just comes naturally to you, right?
Yes.
And for me, I find humor really, really hard, to the point where the humor in my book is almost one flavor. Like, it's, if you read all of my books, you'll kind of get the same flavor of it. And so there's some authors who can just shift tone from story to story, series to series, and it's so much easier for them. So when I see that, it's like, man, I wish I had that. But then trying to be the best, trying to be the next Brandon Sanderson, the next Tolkien, the next Scott Lynch, the next Rothfuss, whoever sort of this idealized version in
Those are some hard ones.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Rothfuss, yeah.
Trying to be those people, I'm never going to be them. I will never be the best, but I will be the best that I can be, and realizing that and sort of saying, okay, this is the goal that I'm shooting for. It's really taken a lot of the pressure off of just the whole writing and creative process. It's still very stressful. It's still very anxiety inducing to try to, come up with these things. But at least I'm not, oh my God, I'm not writing fast enough. I'm not putting out the next book. I am currently 2 books ahead. Or no, 4 books ahead, because book 3 is on pre-order and I'm working on book 7. So I've got plenty of time. I don't need to write fast. I just need to write good.
So I have a question for you, Sean.
Good.
Do you believe working on your self-worth too much? So we become aware of self-worth and like, okay, I need to raise this. Do you think going overboard can make you selfish?
Well, interestingly enough, to an extent, I think it can. If you depend too much on those external criteria. That's why I said I think the external criteria are a good starting point. But if you don't then anchor it in relationships, you're just going to go, if you keep having success, then you're just going to carry over. So my main character in the book, he's struggling with this in book 3. Hey, he's gotten a lot stronger. He's grown. He's not facing the challenges that he was facing before. In fact, he's now one of the stronger people that he's going to be around. So he's, a little bit of look at me. And there's this progression and that he's got to go through, and he's got to, just like relationship eventually took him out of dependence on his actions for self-worth. Now, hopefully relationship pulls him back out of thinking too much of himself too.
So we have a difference between ego and self-worth. Ego is like this fake self-worth. Would you say?
I would agree.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have anywhere else going with that. Because I was thinking, there's a reason why I don't read Neil Gaiman or Terry Pratchett. It's because I'm jealous. I read them and I'm laughing out loud. I'm like, I can't do this. I quit. I'm not reading the book anymore. Same with that movie that just came out. It was a lit RPG by Klusser, Eric. He's from Austin. Not Rogue One. Anyway, it's done by Steven Spielberg. But it was so funny.
Ready Player One.
That's right. Yeah. I read that book all the way to the last chapter and I was laughing so hard. I didn't want to read it anymore because I'm like, I'll never be this guy. They don't use puns, should I not be using puns? And I'm like, that's your ego talking, Stevie. You still make people laugh. You need to be able to finish these books. And it's still something I struggle with today though.
Yeah. And here's the thing about human beings. We never are staying still. If you think you have arrived, then you've got a problem, because you're going to either fall one way or the other. There's no stasis. I guess not, at least until death. So
stagnation is death. That's one of my favorite quotes. Another one. I don't bring religion a lot into this, but I found like I've had very few times to talk about God to people who are genuinely interested, had because I've been trained in the Catholic Bible, and then I went on to non-denomination study. It's not that much, but I've had few instances where I was able to let me tell you these awesome stories. And I wish I could do that more. There was a point to this, by the way, everybody, and it just kind of escaped from me. Wow. Just kind of, but yeah, let's talk God.
Well, why don't we go to the reading so we can find out how it reads.
Yeah, everyone, open your books to Exodus 2:12.
Hey, and Steve, by the way, the king of puns in lit RPGs, book 5 in his most recent series is still sitting at top 300 on Amazon. So,
king of puns, who's that?
Dakota Kraut.
Oh, wait, why do I know Dakota Kraut? Did we have him on here?
No, we had James Hunter.
Yeah. So Dakota and James are pretty tight.
Dakota Crowd. You know what? I feel like I messaged him. I just like his last name so damn much. I want to crowd him.
Anyways, it's all puns all the time, and yet it works. So hey,
yes, that's what I loved.
You're good.
I did speak to this guy actually. He's really really nice.
Yeah.
That actually, Sean, thank you for telling me that, because some of my bad reviews have been like, please, the puns, you're poisoning me. But I love puns so much.
Yeah. I had a reviewer tell me that if I wrote a book that everybody liked, it would probably be a piece of unmitigated crap, because, nobody could ever like every book.
Yeah, very true.
Please everyone.
Yeah, my grandma told me that after she's like the most religious person I know. And she goes, "Do you know where they live?" I was like, "Grandma, relax." She goes, "Those sons of bitches, I'll get them." She's like the classic crazy grandma. I love her so much. But Andy, could you send me the thing real quick?
I already did.
Okay.
I emailed you the document in Google Drive. I mean, Google Documents. And Sean, this is the part of the weekly episode where Stevie tries to find the thing which he should have gotten weeks ago.
It's nowhere. It's nowhere. I looked up Sean. Is Sean your name on the thing?
I think I didn't forward it to you, Stevie.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't see it. I'm sorry. It's not here in my email. Stevie.fiction. Don't you know my email?
Check in the private chat for the link.
Sorry, everybody. Just listen to the sound of my voice. It's so interesting. But okay, I got it. So, I got to request access. I'm not joking. Is there a Word document of it?
He will give you access, I guess.
Yep, I'm changing that right now. So
okay.
So by way of setup, at this part of the book, the dad and daughter who we talked about are getting ready to go out and do their thing. They're going to try to clear the area and make it safe. Okay. Okay, so I updated permissions on it. So
thank you.
Anyone with the link. And they make some bad decisions. And I chose this little excerpt because it's got some different voices. And Andy said you really like to do voices.
Yes,
Stevie is absolutely going to be the daughter, because that's his role on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Sean, do you want to do the narrator?
That's fine. I'll be the narrator. Although, to be fair, my audiobook has a fabulous narrator who I could never possibly keep up with.
That we all accept that we will never be professional level audiobook narrators and just have fun anyways.
Yeah, I mean, mine was British too, so it's like already unbeatable for fantasy.
Well, I mean, my narrator actually starred in the first Caddyshack movie. So
what?
If he had a role in that movie, he's got to be awesome.
What the chocolate bar? It's the best part of that movie. Which as a kid, I actually thought that was poop. Wait, was it really poop? I don't remember. Andy, stop taking us off the track.
Yes.
Come on.
Sean, why don't you start the reading?
Yeah, wait, how old is the little girl?
15.
Okay.
So, I have great faith in fools. Self-confidence, my friends call it. Edgar Allan Poe. Dave decided a quick scouting mission would be appropriate. He started to leave town when he heard a familiar voice calling,
"Dad?"
He turned to see that Mira was headed his way at a quick jog. Wearing her elven leathers, she was able to move much faster than when she wore the dress the village people had made for her.
"I want to come with you."
Come with me? What do you mean?
"Are we really going to do this, Dad? You know I have increased my intelligence, right? I'm probably smarter than any person on Earth ever."
Mira's voice took on that teenage disdain.
All of those smarts should let you know that speaking to your dad like that is never going to get you what you want.
Dave crossed his arms as he spoke to Mira, taking on that serious look that she recognized to mean that no amount of arguing on her part was going to get her what she wanted. Even with that, she was still tempted to try arguing. She was the smartest one here, after all. Eventually, discretion won out.
Okay, I'm sorry, Daddy.
Thank God. Amazing.
She adopted a penitent stance and that pouty face that had worked so well for her for the past 15 years.
I know you wouldn't be out here if you weren't going to cross the river, and I want to go with you. I can be useful, and I'm not helpless or anything.
Dave let out an inner groan as he felt his anger start to dissipate. Emily always told him that his daughters had him wrapped around their fingers, and as soon as she said, Daddy, he knew he was going to end up giving in. Besides, Mira was right. She was far from a helpless 15-year-old. She would be a useful asset.
Fine, sweetie. Let's not waste time arguing about this. I'll let you come hunting with me. On
Dave
one
then
condition.
paused.
On one
Sorry.
condition. You have to give me our sacred pinky promise that if any point you're in danger, you'll run back and get your mother. You will not stay if I tell you to go.
It was Mira's turn to smile now. They'd formed the bond of the sacred pinky promise when she was only 5 years old. It had started out as her way of making sure that Dad would actually let her get whatever reward he promised her for going to sleep. But it had evolved into a personal connection between the two of them, a way that she didn't have to share her dad with anyone else.
Okay, Dad.
She answered simply as she held out her hand and extended her long, slender elven finger. They hooked their fingers together and shook them up and down 3 times, saying,
I invoke the sacred
pinky promise.
Speaking those words always took Dave back to the early days with Mira when she would say,
I soak the sacky pinky promise.
Both father and daughter had come a long way, yet sometimes the old bonds bind the tightest. Several hours later, father and daughter were walking in the woods. They had not seen anything larger than a rabbit, certainly none of the beasts they were expecting. It was as if all the larger animals had disappeared. There was no indication of any lynx, hounds, bears, or even trants, beyond tracks which led deeper into the forest. The odd thing was that over time, all the tracks seemed to lead in one direction. Soon the trail was obvious enough that even Mira could follow it without any tracking skill. The underbrush had been pushed down, and the evidence of many footprints were on the ground, all overlapping. Finally, they came to the end of the trail, and in front of them, they saw not a cluster of animals, but instead a small hillside exposed by erosion. It all seemed natural until Mira noticed the mouth of the tunnel in the side of the hill. It wasn't a cave, but rather well-worked stone, seamlessly fit together as if it had been poured into place, 8 feet high and perhaps 12 feet wide at the base, but it narrowed at the top to no more than 8 feet. Both of the sides slanted inward to create this effect.
I wonder where this came from.
No idea, but this definitely makes me curious.
Mm-hmm.
Even Mira's half-moon elf vision was not enough to see very far into the murky blackness of the tunnel. From what they could tell without crossing the threshold, the walls inside were made of the same clearly worked stone, which was smoother than it had any right to be. All just plain gray stone, so perfectly fit together they couldn't see a way for it to be made with the level of technology they were aware of in Eloria. One logical assessment failed to provide an explanation. The inner gamer in Dave spoke up. Eloria was a world based on game rules. What could be more game-like than a dungeon? No sooner had that thought crossed his mind than Dave felt a rush of excitement. Dungeons were where all the best XP and loot were found in almost every game he'd ever played. They also decided it couldn't be anything else. After explaining his theory to Mira, she began to share in his excitement. She might not be a gamer, but she'd become addicted to leveling up and wanted to continue progressing. With a bit of discussion about precautions and with a promise to one another, they were only going to step in briefly to look around. Dave grabbed her hand in excitement, swinging their arms between him as he stepped forward with a boldly spoken,
Geronimo!
Unbeknownst to either father or daughter, they were not the only ones outside of the dungeon. Another set of eyes were watching them. Small, beady eyes, filled with hostility and fear. Krink mumbled to himself.
Stevie, you got this guy.
Okay. Big man who's
Goblin. Goblin.
What? It's a
The
goblin?
Big man who gets bigger and scary fire elf.
He watched as they stared at the entrance for so long that the goblin began to think they'd fallen asleep. Then in one step, they both disappeared from sight as they crossed into the dungeon. He felt a rush of excitement. Now was his chance. He rubbed his hands.
Pretty little elfling, pretty little elf will be mine. My treat, my pet, my prize.
Crink continued speaking under his breath, mumbling in the rush of his excitement. His patience was going to pay off. This was the lesson that all Goblin Scouts learned, painfully and repeatedly. The strange thoughts in his mind returned as he longed to get the little elfling. He really didn't understand exactly what he wanted her for. He knew he wanted the shiny she wore, and he knew that he liked the way she looked, but he didn't know why. She was really more food than he could eat by himself, and yet there was something about her that made him want her.
No thinking. Time now is for running and catching.
The goblin rubbed his hands together as he turned towards the village and ran. Inside the dungeon, Dave berated himself. Sorry. Apparently, I can't control my document.
No problem.
Letting your excitement get the better of you was such a noob move. He knew that he'd rushed into a new dungeon in a game. He knew if he'd rushed into a new dungeon in a game without studying it beforehand, he'd be ridiculed by his guildmates and friends. Worse, it could result in a wipe of the team and hours of lost gaming time and effort. As serious a gaffe as that would have been in a game, Eloria was no game. It was a world far more brutal. Failure here could result in real death, not just the loss of pixelated gear or XP. Then feeling a petite hand squeeze his, Dave turned to see his precious daughter. So many decisions first on Earth, and even more so now on Eloria, had been made solely that he could protect his family. And here he was, rushing in like a fool with his daughter in tow.
Sweetie, I'm sorry.
Confusion obvious upon her face, Mira asked.
Sorry for what, Dad?
Dave didn't immediately answer. He let the moment of silence serve to punctuate the gravity of his words. While pausing, he studied Mira's face. Even though she was a half-elf now, it was still the same face, the same smile, which had won his heart over before she could speak a word.
Look, I know you're smart, and I've seen the magic you wield now, but it's still my job to protect you. Still my job to make sure you make it home safely.
What are you worried about, Dad? The forest is right behind us.
Then as Mira looked back, she gasped, for the zone line between the dungeon and the forest was a solid black wall, and she couldn't see the outside.
I shouldn't have brought you. We don't know what lives here.
Dad, I processed all of the options and the available information, and really, there hasn't been anything in the Mirkwood that the two of us couldn't handle, probably with ease.
A wry grin at her naivety crossed his face.
Maybe you processed all the information available to you, but I have information you don't. This world follows game-like rules, and in games, dungeons are nothing to be messed with. They're exciting places where the most challenging monster are, as well as the best treasures.
That doesn't sound so bad. We could use a bit of a challenge, and who doesn't want some treasure?
Dave chuckled again at her youthful enthusiasm. He felt he was watching a positive change take place in his daughter. She'd always been too hesitant on Earth, never a leader, but more of a follower in social situations. He just had to make sure that the process of learning to be confident didn't lead to her death.
Sweetie, it isn't that simple. Well, actually, I don't know if it's that simple or not. For all I know, once we cross the zone line, we won't be able to leave without finishing the dungeon and killing the boss monster that almost certainly is waiting somewhere in here.
Okay, so let's be logical then. Do we just leave now? Wouldn't it be a shame to not explore at least a little bit?
Well, the first thing that has to happen is we need to know if we can zone out. So I want you to step back into the Mirkwood and wait for me.
Her nose scrunched up like it used to when he told her she had to eat her vegetables or clean her room. Mira said,
I agreed to leave if it was dangerous, not just because you suddenly had second thoughts. Remember, in this world, I'm an adult now, so I should get some say in this.
Mira stopped speaking as she saw the look of frustration taking over her father's face. Then before he could argue, she dropped his hand and stepped back across the zone line. As Dave watched, 1 second she was standing right next to him, and then suddenly she was not. After waiting more than 2 minutes for Mira to return, Dave muttered to himself, well, it's probably time for me to leave too. It was at that moment, though, that he realized he wasn't alone in the dark of the tunnel. He heard a raspy voice say,
We can't let you leave. Not after all the preparations we have made for you.
We'll have to stop there because we're running out of time. But that's a great place to stop because people want to know what that raspy voice is. I read ahead, so I know what it is.
Thank you, Daddy.
You all don't know, so go find out.
That
Careful,
was awesome.
Stevie. You call me Daddy too many times on this podcast, and it is going to inspire some weird shit.
No way. Not with our community. That's impossible. Yep, it's the crotch goblin. See, just go read the chat. It's great. I love it. I love it so much. Sean, thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was freaking awesome.
That's fun. Okay. You just got to work on channeling your inner petulant 15-year-old.
That was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. It almost took a British turn there for a second. I don't know why. It's harder than the goblin. If I can make a fake creature's voice, it's but Andy always gives me the tough ones because he knows I need a challenge. So Sean,
who doesn't?
Very true. It increases their self-worth. For sure. Sean, so why don't you tell people where they can find you and follow you?
All right, so I am really only on Facebook, and to be honest, until I started this author route, I was not on social media at all. I was allergic to it. But you can find me on Facebook, and I have an Amazon author page. Book 1's out now. Book 2's coming out in July, and book 3 is about 110,000 words written now. So. Nice.
Very nice.
So awesome. Yeah, not too bad for starting on May 21st last year. Now, not Andy level, but for us hacks at home who have to work 50 hours a week and take care of the kids, it's not bad. So
us hacks. Well, I don't. Yeah. Hear that, Andy? You make us all look like hacks.
I will internalize that and build my self-worth on that, Stevie. Thank you.
I love all the backtracking to the self-worth. That's funny.
Absolutely.
So Andy, anyone who's coming on next week?
Well, if JT Williams, my nemesis and arch rival and inferior fellow author, will ever respond to my messages, we'll have him on. If not, we will have somebody else on.
Fellow author. I like how small that was. It's funny. Those podcasts are always freaking hilarious. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for being on the air with us today.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Well, this has been another awesome episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. If you enjoyed Sean's work, and I know you did, go check it out. That is the Watcher's Test, a lit RPG saga, and that is book 1 in Life in Exile, found on Amazon and on Audible, right?
Yes,
it's on Audible. So go check that out. Thank you, sexy folks, so much for joining us at the Fantasy Fiends Inn. We hope you enjoyed your stay, and we'll see you next week for another awesome episode. Good night. Bye. Good night, Daddy. And my chest hair showing when I say it,